Jeremy Chaput, Capturing the Moments That Shaped Me, by Jeremy Chaput. Acknowledgements. I would first like to thank Stefan for asking me to write this book. I was going to write this book in the future, but not until I was about 30 or 40. So you could thank him for asking me to write this book sooner. Next, I would like to thank my friends Corey Holmes, Jay Grace, and Derek DeLuisa for going live with me on my Instagram when I announced I started writing this book. I would also like to thank Jack Zulich, Thomas Fagioni, and whoever else also went live with me on my Instagram when I announced I started writing this book. Finally, I would like to thank anyone else who knew about and supported me while writing this book. This book is dedicated to the memory of my mom and grandpa. This book is also dedicated to my beautiful and amazing girlfriend. Hello, listener. My name is Jeremy Chaput, and I'm the author of the book you're about to listen to. This is the second book that I have ever written, so thank you for giving this book a chance. I hope you enjoy it. I would just like to give you two quick messages before you enjoy listening. The first is that there may be some swearing in it. I will try to keep it to a minimum. The second message is please listen to this book carefully, because there may be some life lessons that you can learn from it. Anyways, enjoy listening. Chapter 1: Early Life Lessons on Family and Broken Bones. Just a fair warning, about 60% of the stuff in this first section is stuff my grandmother has told me. I don't know if it's 100% true or not. For those of you who don't know much about me, I was born January 13th, 2001 at the old St. Joseph's Hospital, currently known as the Eyesore. I lived with my mother until just after my second birthday when she went into the hospital, but more on that in a minute. When I was a year old, my grandparents were helping my mom move stuff in, carrying it up the stairs at Rumball because they refused to let her use the elevator. Apparently, I was crawling up the stairs behind my mother, and she ended up falling backwards down the stairs and landed on my right leg. When they took me to the hospital, my right leg was broken, so I ended up being in a cast for 14 weeks and spending my second birthday in the hospital. I got the cast off on a Wednesday, and then apparently 2 days later on Friday, my grandpa had me sitting on top of a pile of stacked pillows. And to nobody's surprise, I fell off the stack of pillows, broke my right leg all over again, and then spent another 14 weeks in a cast. Now, moving back to my mother. As much as I loved her, I still blame her for the problems I have now with cold weather. Apparently, she took me from Rumball to where my grandparents lived 1 kilometer away in a wagon in minus 10 to minus 15 degree weather. She put my winter jacket, snow pants, and boots on me, but no hat, mitts, or scarf. So now when it's cold outside, my face and hands get really cold really fast. But like I said, I loved my mother even though I wasn't able to talk to her. When I was 2 years old, my mother went into the hospital. At first, the doctors said she had Lou Gehrig's disease, also known as ALS. My grandma said from the very beginning that she thought my mother had a major stroke, but the doctor told my grandmother she was full of shit and didn't know what she was talking about. Because my mother was in the hospital, I would go to school and then go to the hospital almost every single day to see my mother. Chapter 2: Elementary School and Bullying. Before I get too far in this chapter, I want to give shoutouts to all my primary school teachers and one special lady. Kindergarten, Miss Carniel. Grade 1, Miss Fowler. Grade 2, Miss Adams. Grade 3, Miss Edmonds. Grade 4, Miss Mashinter. Grade 5, Miss Amadio. Grade 7, Miss Veno. Grade 8, Miss Evans. Grade 1 until grade 8, Miss Johnson. You may have noticed that I skipped grade 6. I will get to that later. I went to McLeod Public School for elementary school. I don't remember anything from kindergarten or grade 1. It was either in grade 2 or grade 3 when Miss Johnson became one of the best supports I've ever had in school. When I was younger, my writing was so bad that nobody could read it. Mind you, most of the other kids could write without any problem. But since my writing was so bad, Miss Johnson got me a computer and taught me how to type so I could type my assignments instead of writing them. And ever since that year, I have been using a computer for most of my writing. Grade 3, 4, and 5 were pretty chill for the most part, other than the principal who would suspend me basically every other week for something stupid. Let me quickly run you through a list of stuff she suspended me for that I can remember. I stood on the wall during recess because I was in timeout and the wall broke. 2-day suspension. I was using the snap cubes that we used in math to build a robot. She said I built a gun. 1-week suspension. I bought an arm off a Transformers robot that turned from a hand to a gun to school. She said I brought a gun to school. 1-week suspension. And now the moment I have waited for. It's time to call out people that I have waited years to call out. It's time for Chapter 3, The Grade from Hell. The Grade from Hell, also known as Grade 6 with Mr. Carroll. Oh, where do I begin? In Grade 6, I had problems where I would blurt out the answers to questions instead of raising my hand. I did it so much that Mr. Carroll would yell at me, and it even got to the point that he would put my desk in the closet that was in the classroom and make me sit in the closet. Mind you, he wasn't mean enough to close the door. I would come home crying and complain that I didn't want to go to school anymore because of Mr. Carroll. My grandma went to the school and informed the principal, Michelle Walton, what was going on. Miss Walton said that Mr. Carroll wasn't allowed to do that and had a quick 5-minute phone call with him. After they hung up, Miss Walton told my grandmother that Mr. Carroll could do whatever he wanted to discipline me because it was the only way he could get me to listen. Another thing I remember from the grade from hell was being sat alone at a table in the hallway to eat lunch by myself. You may be asking yourself, Jeremy, why did you have to eat lunch in the hallway by yourself? Well, let me tell you. It's because I chewed with my mouth open. Mind you, I wasn't the only kid that chewed with their mouth open, but I was the only kid singled out. It was thanks to Miss Johnson that she found another class that would allow me to eat in the room with them. So Mr. Carroll and Miss Walton, the heck with you guys. You should have never been allowed to be staff at McLeod. And Miss Johnson, shout out to you for being totally awesome. Chapter 4, My Mother, Part 2. The year was 2008. I was in grade 2. My mother's doctor called a meeting with my grandparents while I was in school. They went to the meeting and my doctor said, "We made a mistake. Your daughter doesn't have ALS." My grandmother asked the doctor what it was. The doctor got up, walked out the door, stuck his head in, and said it was a major stroke, and walked away. From that day forward, my grandparents and I were treated like royalty. We could go see my mom anytime we wanted. We didn't have to follow visiting hours. We got a free parking pass to use until my mother passed away, no matter how long that was. When the hospital opened up where it is now, they took my mother to the new hospital and let her pick out her own room. They let my mother have her own flat screen TV in her room. The little store that they had in the lobby would give me free ice cream cups anytime I went in, and they would even let me serve customers. Flash forward to October 1st, 2011. The hospital calls my entire family to the hospital because my mom wasn't going to make it to the next day. Me, my grandparents, my 2 brothers, my 2 aunts, and uncle all rushed to the hospital. We were all in the room with my mothers for hours until almost the end of visiting hours. The nurses told us that we had to leave, but they would call us if anything happened and we had to rush back in. About 9 a.m. the next morning, the nurses called and said we had to rush back in because my mom was going to end up dying. So myself, my grandparents, my two brothers, and one of my aunts rushed to the hospital. My other aunt and uncle didn't show up because they said they would rather remember my mom the way she was the day before. The people who were there talked to my mom for about 1 to 2 hours, and then she was gone. 3 days later, on October 5th, we had the celebration of life and funeral for my mother. I don't remember much from that day other than two small but kind things. The first thing I remember is multiple teachers from McLeod showing up. The second thing I remember is Jay Grace and Ryder Johnston showing up with, I believe, Jay's mom. They bought 2 gift baskets from my class and the entire grade, along with a giant card that most of the kids in my grade signed. I will always be grateful to those people from McLeod that showed up. Chapter 5. The rest of elementary school. I don't remember much from grade 7, besides the band trip which I will quickly touch on. In grade 7, I was part of band. For a trip, we went to Canada's Wonderland for the weekend. We may have gone someplace else as well, but I don't remember. The only thing I do remember is that when we got back home, I forgot my suit on the bus. Luckily, I was able to get it back. Grade 8, on the other hand, was a whole nother story. Grade 8, Miss Seven's class. Where do I begin? The first month of grade 8 started off normal. About October or November, it was either Miss Evans or one of the lunch monitors that came to the classroom and said that a kindergarten class was looking for 2 people to be lunch monitors in the classroom because the kids were being a little rowdy. Myself and my friend Tessa said that we would do it. So the next day, we went to the classroom and met the teacher. She told us to make sure the kids ate their entire lunches and to make sure they stayed in their seats while they were eating. She said once the kids were done eating, we were allowed to read them books if they asked us to. The first week or two, the kids were still getting used to us being in the classroom and learning our names, so they were a little unsure about us. The third week, something amazing happened. One of the kids came up to me and said, "Jeremy, could you read this book for us?" and handed me If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. So here's Jeremy, sitting on the floor because I was so tall, with 10 to 15 kids sitting around him, reading If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. By the end of the first month of us being there, the kids would go crazy when they saw us enter the classroom. Flash forward to either December, May, or June. My entire grade was going on a week-long trip. I wasn't able to go because of my back, which I will get to in Chapter 8. Since I wasn't able to go with the rest of my grade, it was either myself or Miss Evans that asked the kindergarten teacher if I could stay in the classroom for the entire week. The kindergarten teacher was nice enough to say yes. So for the entire week, from the beginning of the school day until the end of the school day, I was in the kindergarten class helping the teacher with whatever she needed and still doing my lunchtime duties plus Tessa's lunchtime duties as well. Now we get to the end of the year. The entire school is having an end of the year day/fair outside. I was there with my aunt. She was sitting on her walker taking a break while I was standing there talking to her. And here comes a little kid shouting, "Jeremy!" The kid comes over and gave me a hug on the leg because I was so tall, and then went and joined the rest of their family. My aunt asked me what that was all about, so I told her everything about me being a lunch monitor. Man, how I missed those days. Chapter 6. Aunt Karen. My Aunt Karen was the second best aunt I had behind my Aunt Susie. My aunt lived in the same building as me for years before she moved out for years, and then moved back into the same building as me. She lived with her common-law partner Wayne, their 2 cats Tigger and Molly, and their dog Ellie. The second time they moved into the same building as me, my aunt lived there for 2 to 3 years and before she died. My aunt went into the hospital on my birthday, January 13th, 2012. Nobody knew what was wrong with her. I thought she would only be in there for maybe a couple of days and then she would be back home. I was wrong. January 14th, just after midnight, my Aunt Karen died. We still don't know what she died from and never will. Chapter 7. Maddie. During the time my Aunt Karen and Wayne were living in their own place, my aunt got me my first and only dog I've ever had. We named her Madison, but called her Maddie for short. Maddie was one of the best dogs I have ever met that my family had. Mind you, I grew up around dogs most of my life. My uncle had 2 or 3 dogs. My aunt had Ellie, who was the sister to Maddie. And there were and still are more dogs than I can count in my apartment building. Maddie never had to go to the animal hospital except for one time that I remember. My grandma found multiple of Maddie's teeth on the rug that she always played on. When we took her to the animal hospital, they had to pull either 14 or 18 of her teeth because they were cracked/rotten. The vet said that it was probably hereditary, but looking back, it may have been caused by the fact my grandpa used to give her empty water bottles to chew on. Flash forward to 2017 or 2018, Maddie wasn't eating or drinking. My grandma called the vet in the morning, and the vet said if we could get her to eat and drink, we could wait until Monday to bring her in. But she got worse throughout the morning. When she peed, it was red. She wouldn't eat or drink. My grandma called the vet again, and the vet said to bring her in. My grandma knew what he was talking about, so my Aunt Susie and I went with Maddie. We got her to the vet, and that's when the vet said it was her time. I knew what he meant after he said that. So the vet gave her the sedative, then told my aunt and I to take as long as we needed. I'm pretty sure my aunt and I were in there for about an hour before I was ready to go. Before we left, the secretary asked if I wanted to keep a lock of fur because we weren't keeping the ashes, and I said no. For the rest of the day and the entire weekend, I sat in my room crying non-stop. It took me a good 2 to 3 months to get used to not having Maddie jump on the bed and wake me up every morning, or coming home after school and having her downstairs to meet me. And the thing that took the longest to get used to was not hearing her bark at midnight because she heard a small noise in the hallway. God, I miss that dog. Chapter 8. The third time I've been injured. We're going back in time a little bit. March 2015. I went out to catch the school bus to go to school. The front walkway of my building was pure ice. No salt or sand. I fell on the ice and damaged my tailbone and 4 vertebrae. So I don't get sued for defamation. All I will say about the incident is that my grandma and I sued the building and won. But because of the accident, I had to go to therapy for my back for 3 years and 7 months. My physiotherapist was one Miss Penny Jacobs, and honestly, she was one of the best doctors I had at the time. I would go to see her every 2 weeks, then every month to try and get my back sort of back to normal. And then in 2018 or in 2019, I started therapy swimming. I would go to therapy swimming once a week to try and help my back get better. And while I was there, I met one of the most amazing kids ever by the name of Ben. Ben was one of the most fun kids I met while working with kids. After I couldn't go back to therapy swimming anymore because I turned 19, I missed seeing Ben every week. Chapter 9. Llewellyn, the School from Hell. This will be a quick chapter because I rather leave it in the past. so I would quickly go through some bullet points. I was bullied, and yet I was the one suspended instead of the bully. The principal didn't try to get me a school bus, so I had to take a taxi to school, $500 a month. A kid stole money from me that I used to take a taxi home. A kid pretended to be a girl I liked back then and catfished me for about a week. I was unlawfully kicked out the last month of grade 10. I ended up failing one or two of my classes. The day I went in with my grandma to pick up my report card, they said they were going to mail it to me because they didn't want me back in the school. There are some other things that I could tell you guys about Llewellyn, but I'd rather not get sued. I do want to give a quick shout out to my best friend Derek DeLuisa, who went to Llewellyn, and also shout out to Ben Kelly, Cole Timoney, and Owen Coles, also known as the Pimp Squad. I still hate how none of the boys told me what a pimp actually was. Chapter 10, Grandpa. February or March 2016. My grandpa ended up going into the hospital because he had a lot of health problems in the past. The first week or two were bad, but he started getting better. In April, one of the nurses that was in his room a lot said that all he kept talking about was how he wanted to see his dog. So the nurse told us that we could sneak Maddie in for a visit and that she would tell the other nurses it was okay. We brought Maddie in to see him, but apparently the nurse never told the head nurse about what we were doing, and she got in trouble. I have no idea how that nurse didn't get fired. Now we get to May 2nd, 2016, my grandma's birthday. Grandma and I made a plan to go visit Grandpa for her birthday before I went to school. The plan was for me to take the bus to the hospital after school, call Grandma when I got there, and then she would call a taxi to go to the hospital. So after school, I went to the hospital and called Grandma when I got there. While waiting for her to arrive, I decided to go up to the room to see Grandpa. I was in his room for about 15 to 20 minutes before Grandma called to say she was on the way. Before I went downstairs to meet Grandma, it sounded like Grandpa was breathing in water, but I thought nothing of it. I went downstairs and met Grandma, and then we went back up. When we got to the room, we tried to wake him up, but when we couldn't wake him up, we called for a nurse. When the nurse came in and checked on him, he was gone. And to this day, even though multiple people have told me it's not my fault, I still blame myself for him dying on my grandma's birthday. Chapter 11, Lockerbie Composite School, Grade 11. Lockerbie Composite School. The school that gave me the best 3 years of high school I could ask for. After all the shit that went down at Llewellyn, Lockerbie was a fresh breath of air. I joined my two other best friends, Drake Grace and Ryder Johnston, and I even made quite a few new friends. There are so many people I want to shout out, but it would take me 2 to 3 pages, so I'll pick the most important ones. Shout out to the following people: Ricky Black, Matt Davenport, Reese Irwin, Kyle Luck, Gordon Miller, Kai Nowak, and Matt Smith. Back to Lockerbie. If you guys remember back to Chapter 9, I had to take a taxi to school because the principal never tried to get me a bus. Within the first 2 weeks of me being at Lockerbie, Principal Runciman had a school bus taking me to school and driving me home. During grade 11 on the morning bus, I had the most amazing bus monitor and driver I could ask for. I don't remember the bus driver's name, but I do remember the bus monitor's name. Her name was Carmen. The only reason I remember that is because she tried to get me a date for prom. More on that later. On the morning bus, I was allowed to play music on my portable speaker I always had with me. I would sing songs, we would talk about school, my life, and a bunch of other stuff as well. The rest of grade 11, I don't remember much except for Chapter 12. The Dance from Hell Part 1. The Dance from Hell, aka Senior Semi-Formal. For about 2 to 3 months before the dance, everyone knew I had a crush on this one girl that we will call Rose. Rose was one of the most beautiful girls I had ever seen at the time. She was smart, had lots of friends, and I honestly thought she was a nice person. I knew senior semi-formal was coming up, so I made a plan that I was going to give her a gift the month before the dance and ask her to be my date. So I bought the gifts and put my plan into action. 2 weeks before the dance, I still had not given her the gifts. Every time I tried to, she was either too busy or I chickened out. My science teacher for that semester somehow knew what I had planned and tried to help me. But what he did, I will always regret. The science teacher left the classroom for about 5 minutes, and when he came back, he told me that someone in the hallway wanted to talk to me. When I got to the hallway, Rose was standing there. Apparently, my science teacher went to the class she was in and asked her to come to his class to see someone. Now, mind you, I didn't ask my science teacher to do that. Rose was upset that my teacher took her out of class. I told her I never asked him to do that, but she didn't believe me. Flash forward to the dance. A little bit of information for you all is that at the dance, the best dressed couple would have to slow dance in front of everyone that was there. The dance starts off great. I couldn't dance as good as I could have because my back was acting up a little bit. So I sat in the back, watched people dance, and took stupid Instagram videos. Now we get to the announcement of Best Dressed Couple. I couldn't hear what the person said, so I just started playing a game on my phone. Imagine my surprise when I start hearing basically everyone start chanting my name. Apparently, a majority of the people voted for me and Rose as Best Dressed Couple. So we had to slow dance in front of everyone. I was happy to do it, but to come to find out in Chapter 19, The Dance from Hell Part 2, Rose wasn't happy. The next week at school, I was called into the principal's office. Apparently, Rose thought I was being creepy and asked the principal to get me to leave her alone. I told the principal that I had gifts I wanted to give to Rose and ask her to be my date to the dance, but I never asked the science teacher to do what he did, and I also never asked everyone at the dance to pick me and her as best dressed. The principal just told me to leave her alone, which I did for the rest of grade 11 and 12. Chapter 13. My first year of grade 12. My first year of grade 12 was something special, but also kinda sad. The first 3 quarters of the year were okay. The only small thing I will mention is working in the school cafeteria as part of co-op. Watching how they did stuff in there was eye-opening and showed me the importance of people who don't often get thanks for all the hard work they do. As we got closer to the end of the year, I realized that I would be losing people that I cared about and that were important to me, especially those who I mentioned in Chapter 11. Watching all the people you got close to throughout the years, planning to go to college or university next year, that are out of town. Now, even though I knew I would be losing my friends, when they told me about their plans for after high school, I always supported them. There are 2 things that hit me really hard. The first thing was watching from the audience as all my friends walked across the stage and got their diplomas. The second thing that hit me really hard was prom. Chapter 14. Prom. Prom. The night I realized this would be the last time I would see a majority of my friends for a long time. To give a little information, what you will come to find out in Chapter 15 is that after their whole Rose situation, I didn't learn my lesson and got a crush on one of the popular girls again that we will call Tara. When I first saw Tara at prom, I thought she was the most beautiful girl there. The first couple of slow dance songs came and went. Before the third slow dance song came on, I made a plan that I was going to ask Tara to dance and then tell her how I felt because I was 99% sure she was single. The third slow dance song is about to start and I go to find Tara but couldn't. I asked people if they knew where she was and apparently she had left already. So for the next 10 to 15 minutes, I sat alone being sad. That was until the boys Ryder, Jay, and Dario came over and asked me to dance with them. So for the rest of the night until I left, I danced and got pictures with the boys. Chapter 15. The Matchmaker Bus Monitor. Going back to 2 months before prom, I was telling my morning bus monitor and driver how I was still looking for a date to prom and how I really didn't want to go to prom by myself. They asked me if I had any idea who I was going to ask, and I said I still had a couple of girls that I could ask to prom. About a month before prom, and I still didn't have a date. My bus monitor Carmen told me on a Friday, which happened to be the last day to buy prom tickets, that I would be getting a message on Instagram from a girl we'll call Dana. I asked her why I would be getting a message from her, and Carmen told me not to worry about it, which wasn't suspicious at all. I get home at the end of the day, and wouldn't you know, I get a message from Dana that says, "Carmen told me you were looking for a prom date." We talked for a while, played 20 questions, and then I told her I would find out if they were still selling tickets on Monday. Monday rolls around, and unfortunately Friday was indeed the last day to buy prom tickets. When I got home, I messaged Dana and told her that Friday was the last day to buy prom tickets. We talked for a couple of months after that, then we haven't talked since. I still sometimes wonder what would have happened if Dana and I went to prom together. Guess we'll never know. Chapter 16. The Stratford Trip. Going back in time to about the middle of my first year of grade 12, there was a trip to Stratford. While on the trip, we went and seen 2 plays. The first one I don't remember, but the second one was the Rocky Horror Picture Show. While on the trip, we also had a chance to explore Stratford. Tara was also on the trip. I made a plan that during the trip I was going to tell her how I felt. While I was exploring and buying things, I ran into Tara and we started talking. But before I got a chance to tell her how I felt, I was interrupted by a message from my friend Brayden, and then one of Tara's friends joined us, so I never got a chance to tell her how I felt. I want to leave this in the past, so I'll say what I want to say about Tara now. The funny thing is, I ran into Tara multiple times after that. I ran into her at the Old Dominion concert I went to, which I will tell you guys about later. And I still had feelings for her when I ran into her at the concert, but before I could tell her how I felt, we got interrupted by her friends. So after that day, I gave up on trying to tell Tara how I felt. Chapter 17. The Sudbury Food Bank. During the 2019-2020 school year, I worked at the Sudbury Food Bank as part of co-op. I got to work alongside the amazing staff of Dan, Lees, Rolly, and Dan's son Jeff. As part of my co-op, I would answer phones, take donations, and even help in the warehouse every once in a while. During Christmas time, I got the chance to work alongside the amazing Lori, Rhonda, Al, co-chairs Sarah Yazinchuk, and Jeff Lalonde as part of the Edgar Burton Christmas Food Drive. Also, while working at the Sudbury Food Bank, I got to go to some amazing events such as the Holiday Train and the Art of Dessert. I will never be able to thank them for allowing me to work at one of the most important places in Sudbury. Chapter 18. Events before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I went to 4 amazing events between January 30th to February 22nd, 2020 that I will quickly touch on. The first event was We Will Rock You. I don't remember much about it, but I do remember that after the show, I gave it a solid 8 out of 10. The second event I went to was Tebe, The Good Ones Tour. At the event, I got to meet country artists Tebe and Matt Lang. I also got to meet Josh and Coop from Pure Country 91.7. Solid 10 out of 10. The third event I went to was Jeff Dunham, Seriously. And honestly, seeing the comedy in person is better than watching it on TV. Solid 8.5 out of 10. The final event I went to was Old Dominion. They had 2 opening acts. The first one was Carly Pearce. Carly Pearce was a solid 7 out of 10, mostly because I didn't know any of her songs. The second opening act was Megan Patrick, who was also a solid 7 out of 10, mostly because I also didn't know any of her songs. Old Dominion, on the other hand, was a solid 11 out of 10. The energy of the crowd, them letting us sing their songs, and honestly just the vibe of the whole night made it my favorite event I went to before the pandemic hit. Chapter 19, The Dance from Hell Part 2. January 21st, 2022. I'm scrolling on YouTube and I see a video that Rose posted with a title along the lines of My Worst High School Experience. I watched the video and what I watched made me feel terrible. In the video, Rose tells everyone what I did for the senior semi-formal. She never mentioned me by name, but who else could she be talking about when she mentioned that the kid had a walker? Mind you, I was the only kid with a walker in high school. After watching the video, I felt terrible for what I did, so I made a public apology and posted it on Instagram. What happened next surprised me. Lots of people commented on the video saying that I shouldn't apologize because I did nothing wrong. I had people who never talked to me reach out to say the same thing. In the span of 24 hours of me posting the apology video, I probably had at least 70 people reach out to check on me. 2 to 3 days after I posted the apology video, Rose reached out to me and said she was sorry about posting the video and said that she should have never posted the video to begin with. As a way to say sorry, she sent me a $50 Milestones gift card if I remember correctly. Because I wanted to move on from the whole situation, I made a video telling everyone that Rose reached out and I accepted her apology. Another 2 to 3 days later, Rose reached out to me and told me she was getting threatening messages and death threats. So I made another video and basically said, I accept Rose's apology. If you guys are my real friends, you will stop sending her threatening messages and death threats. If you guys are my real friends, you will move on from this whole situation. After that, everything cooled down, and that was the end of it. Chapter 20, My Second Girlfriend. January 31st, 2025. I was at the Youth Wellness Hub getting ready to leave, and I told Derek, one of the peer support workers, that I had a crush on a person that came to the Youth Wellness Hub. I gave him 3 hints and told him to think about it on the weekend and see if he could tell me who it is on Monday. After leaving the Youth Wellness Hub, a girl we will call Jade and I would sit at the front door of the YMCA and talk while I waited for my taxi and they waited for the bus. Jade asked me who my crush was and I told them the 3 hints. Jade said that the only person that came to mind was themselves and asked if it was them. I said it was, and then we proceeded to talk about other stuff until my taxi arrived. The following Monday, February 3rd, I asked Derek if he figured out who my crush was. He said he couldn't figure it out and asked me for the clues again. I gave him the clues again and told him to think about it for the night. Jade and I left and went to our usual spot to talk again while I waited for my taxi. They said that the feelings I had for them were mutual. They said they wanted to be in a relationship, but with all the stuff they had going on, they didn't want to tie me down. I told Jade that I don't care how busy they are. I just wanted to be tied down in a relationship. So either that same day or a couple of days later, we started dating but never made it official. The next day, I told all the peer support workers that I had a crush on someone that came to the Youth Wellness Hub. Derek said he wasn't 100% sure, so he made a guess and was correct. 10 seconds after giving Mike and Albie the 3 hints, they figured it out. Kate and Darcy, on the other hand, knew who it was without the hints. I asked them how they knew who it was without the hints. They said it was the vibe Jade and I gave off. The next day, I told Kate all the tea and told her about my plans for Valentine's Day. My plan was to buy 3 gifts off of Amazon and give them to Jade. What were the 3 gifts, you ask? The first was a mini bottle with a key inside. A tag attached to the bottle said, "You hold the key to my heart." The second gift was a stuffed capybara holding a flower, and the last gift was a bear made out of flowers with a necklace that said "I love you" in 100 different languages. The next day I went to Walmart, and to my surprise, I found the stuffed capybara holding the flower for about $10 cheaper than what I would have paid on Amazon. So I bought the stuffed capybara and a giant card that said "meant to be" on the cover. Inside the card it said, "Maybe it's luck, maybe it's destiny. All I know is that your love is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Happy Valentine's Day." When I got home, I went on Amazon to order the 2 other things. I got the key in the bottle, but when I went to get the flower bear, it was all sold out. So I got a preserved rose instead that still had the necklace. Monday, February 9th came along. My grandma was getting suspicious about me hiding stuff, so I bought the gifts with me to the Youth Wellness Hub and gave them to Jade that day. By their reaction, I could tell Jade was happy, which made me happy. And that was that. We have been together ever since. Section 2. Other Stuff. Chapter 21. Jimmy Flynn. An event I went to that I quickly want to touch on is going to see Jimmy Flynn. Jimmy Flynn was one of my grandma's favorite comedians, so when he came to Subway, I just knew I had to go. His opening act was local comedian Naughty Nana Does. I would give the whole night a solid 8 out of 10. Chapter 22. Wrestling Shows. Since July 2023, I have been to 10 plus wrestling shows. I went to 2 Canadian Wrestling Elite shows and 1 Great Canadian Wrestling show. Both shows I would give a 5 out of 10. Nothing special besides getting to meet Chris Masters, 2 Cold Scorpio, and Eric Rowan. The other wrestling shows I have gone to have all been from a local Subway wrestling company called Project X Wrestling. Where do I begin? 95% of the events I have gone to for Project X Wrestling have been 10 out of 10. I have gotten to meet so many amazing wrestlers, including 2 wrestlers from Subway, Magnum McLaren and Nova. I've also gotten to meet WWE legend, the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. I have also fallen in love watching other wrestlers such as the Green Phantom, Marty Scurll, Space Monkey, Matthias Meyer, Airstrike, and Genesis. Anytime there is a Project X Wrestling show, there is a 99% chance you will find me there. Chapter 23. NostalgiaCon Sudbury. Another event I want to quickly touch on wasn't anything exciting. The only good thing about the event was getting to meet Jane Perry and David Bateson because I'm a huge Hitman video game fan. The only other good thing was getting to meet Sam Tarasco, who played Sam the Caveman in Trailer Park Boys. Chapter 24, NostalgiaCon Toronto. NostalgiaCon Toronto. Oh, how I could talk about you for pages and pages. But I have already talked about the trip for 2+ hours before, so if you want to find out what NostalgiaCon Toronto is like, go watch my video, The Great Comeback, my trip to NostalgiaCon Toronto, on my YouTube channel, Jeremy C. Vlogs. Chapter 25, The Hospital Stay. Before I get into this chapter, I just want to say that the stuff in this chapter is what I can remember combined with what I had in my notes. So if there are big jumps between dates, I'm sorry. March 6th, 2023. I'm walking to go to the drugstore to pick up my grandmother's pills. And boom, down I go. I feel pain in my left ankle, but I'm pretty sure it's just sprained. I try to stand up, and nope, something is definitely wrong. I wave down a car that is going by, and a lady gets out. She is nice enough to call an ambulance and wait with me until the ambulance shows up. The paramedics struggle to get me into the ambulance because of the ice and also because of the slant of the sidewalk. About 20 minutes later, they finally get me into the ambulance and give me meds for the pain. We get to the hospital at 10 a.m. and they tell me my ankle is broken. I'm in so much pain I don't remember anything from the time I got to the hospital until they put me in a room between 3 to 4 p.m. My aunt stays with me in the room until they come to get me to go to surgery. At 8 p.m., they take me down to do the surgery. Before going in, I asked them if I could call my grandma because I want to tell her I loved her. The reason I did that is because with my past experiences with the hospital, I thought something was going to go wrong. I talked to my grandma for a few minutes and then they take me into the operating room and get me on the table. I'm sitting on the table and they start numbing me so I don't feel any pain. One of the people could tell I was a little nervous and asked me what my favorite kind of music was. I told them country, and they changed the radio to country music to try and relax me. What feels like 15 to 20 minutes later, they tell me to lay down on the table. My whole body was numb, so they helped me to make sure I didn't fall off the table. They put the anesthesia mask on me and hooked me up to all the machines they needed to. If I remember correctly, the very first machine they hooked me up to was to monitor my breathing. That one was, in my opinion, the most important one because of my asthma. The next thing I remember is waking up in the operating room and them transferring me back onto the bed. After they got me back onto the bed, I fell asleep again and don't remember anything until I wake up in a recovery room. I ask the nurse working what time it is, and she tells me it's 10:30 p.m. I sleep again until about 11:30 p.m. when they come in to do blood work to make sure I don't have an infection or anything else wrong. I'm just about to fall asleep again when the nurse tells me I have to stay awake for some reason I can't remember. So from 11:30 p.m. until they took me back into my room at 1 a.m., I struggled to stay awake because I'm so tired. After they got me back into my room, I immediately fell asleep again and slept until I was woken up at 8:30 a.m. for morning checkups. The nurse I had for the day did the checkup and then told me I could go back to sleep. The next thing I remember after that was my aunt coming into my room at about 1 p.m. Jumping forward a little bit to March the 10th. The physiotherapist I had wanted me to start going to the gym and getting up instead of laying in my bed or sitting in my wheelchair all day. So he takes me to the gym and we start by me getting up out of the chair and sitting back down. We do that for about 30 minutes with breaks in between, and then I went back to my room. We did that every 3 days until I was able to do more. Jumping forward to March 21st, I was taken down to the Ambulatory Care Unit, or ACU as I'll call it from now on, to get my cast taken off. After they took the cast off, I went and got x-rays of the ankle, and then I was taken back to the ACU. The doctor came in and told me they were going to remove the staples and sutures that were in my ankle. I asked him if they were going to numb me for the pain. He said I wouldn't feel any pain from the sutures and would only feel little pinches when they took out the staples. So I lay in my bed for 10 to 15 minutes as they took the staples and sutures out of both sides of my ankle. After that, they put another cast on me and made an appointment for me to come back on April 25th to have the cast taken off. Moving on to March 22nd, the physiotherapist took me to the gym for every 3-day workout. I thought I would just be doing sit-to-stands again, but he told me that I was able to start doing more, so we started easy by doing heel raises. Mind you, I still couldn't put any weight on my broken ankle, so I had to do heel raises on one leg. We do heel raises for about 15 minutes before moving on to hopping forwards and backwards, and hopping to turn around. 15 minutes of doing that, and back I went to my room. I do want to touch on one quick thing. While in the hospital, I had some amazing food, and then some not so good food. But I think my favorite meal the whole time I was in the hospital was the meal I had on April 9th for Easter. 2 pieces of pineapple glazed ham, mashed potatoes, mixed veggies, spinach, 2 salads, and for dessert, carrot cake. Jumping forward to April 25th, I went back to the ACU and got the cast taken off and more x-rays done. When I got back to the ACU, they said they were going to put a walking cast on me and to try walking in the gym the next time I went. So the next time I went to the gym, I tried walking. It took me a good hour or so to feel comfortable walking with the cast. The next day I started walking to the bathroom and also started walking in the hall, both with assistance. April 28th, I was moved to the St. Joseph's Continuing Care Center, which I will call the CCC from now on. One piece of information before I continue is that all the people at the CCC were elderly. I don't think there was a single person below 55. The first day I got to the CCC, I went to the dining room to have lunch and then was shown to my room. After I got settled in, my least favorite thing happened. More tests. They took blood work and swabbed me in multiple different places, including the behind. After they got the test results back, they told me I was free to explore, as long as I didn't leave the floor, and if I wanted to find stuff out, to ask one of the staff. After a little bit of exploration, I decided to join a crossword activity that was happening in the dining room. While there, I met 2 people that I would talk to almost every day I was at the CCC. I wish I could remember their names, but I can't. I don't remember much of my time at the CCC because I mostly stayed in my room with visitors. The only thing I do remember about the CCC is going to bingo once a week and church in the dining room twice a week. One of the churches I went to every week was for Catholics, and the other one was for non-Catholics. We get to May 15th. I was in my room with my aunt, who visited me almost every day, when one of the people who worked at the CCC came in. They told me I could go home in the 1st or 2nd week of June, as long as everything went good. I was so excited I almost jumped out of bed. 4 days later, while my aunt was visiting, the same person came into my room and said, "I have good news and bad news." I asked them what the bad news was because I'm one of the people who always want the bad news first. The bad news was I was being kicked out of the CCC on the 23rd. The person could tell I looked worried and said, "The good news is you get to go home." I asked them what happened to the first or second week of June. Apparently, I had gotten better quicker than they thought. May 23rd comes around, and the first thing I do when I get up is pack my bags to take with me to breakfast. As I'm leaving my room, I start getting a little emotional. I look back at my room and say thank you for everything. As I'm walking down the hall to get to breakfast early, I stop by rooms of people I became friends with and said my goodbyes because I knew if I said goodbye at breakfast, I would probably cry. As I get to the end of the hall, I turn around and stare down the hallway one last time. One of the people that worked at the CCC asked me what I was doing. I told her that when I leave a place I know I'm never coming back to, I like to stare and take in all the memories. I leave my stuff at the chairs by the elevator and go sit at my spot to eat breakfast one last time at the CCC. After I'm done eating, I get ready to leave. I grab all my stuff and get ready to push the button for the elevator. Before I do, I turn around and stare at the floor I was on and soaked in all the memories one last time. I can feel tears start building up, so I push the button, get on the elevator, and head downstairs. Once I get downstairs, my brother is waiting for me. We pack my stuff in his vehicle, we get in, and drive away. Chapter 26 Eating Disorder. September 14th, 2023, I started going to an eating disorder group because I have binge eating disorder, or BED as I'll call it from here on out. The definition of BED is a serious condition that always involves feeling like you can't stop eating. I was in the eating disorder group for September, October, and November. In November, Karen realized the group wasn't helping me, so she did something that she totally didn't have to do. She started having one-on-one meetings with me instead, and said that we could take it as slow as we needed to. Once we got to the food section, Kristen, the dietitian, joined us for every meeting. And to make the meetings more fun, I would sing a song at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting, which they were both cool with. If I didn't sing a song, they would ask me if I was going to sing one. At the same time as the eating disorder meetings, I would go to see Dr. Abusive every 2 to 3 months as well. He was the doctor for the BED clinic. The last time I had a meeting with Karen and Kristen was December 24th in person. I thought it was just going to be a normal meeting to talk about stuff, but I was wrong. When I first got to the meeting, I did what I always did and sang a song. Then we got to the important paperwork. The entire time we were doing paperwork, I would jokingly say to Karen, "And that's why Kristen is my favorite. At least she's not making me do paperwork," and we would all have a good laugh. After the paperwork was done, we talked about the future and what I had planned going forward. I told them I honestly don't know and that I was taking it one day at a time. With about 10 minutes left in the meeting, Karen handed me a bag and told me it was my Christmas present. When I opened it, there was lots of stuff to do with wrestling. There was a notebook that on the cover said, "Let me stop you right there. If this isn't about wrestling, I'm not interested." There was a word search book, a bunch of stickers, and a keychain that said, "Wrestling is my favorite season." After the meeting was done, I did my usual thing of staring at the room and soaking in all the memories. The only difference is I didn't stare at the building this time because I see the building anytime I'm downtown. Honestly, I will never be able to thank Dr. Ajuwazi, Karen, or Kristen for all their help. Section 3 Undated Stuff. Chapter 27 Youth Wellness Hub. Starting February or March of 2024, I started going to the Youth Wellness Hub. While there, I have met some amazing people such as Amanda, Irene, Cece, Kate, Darcy, Anuj, Albie, Derek, Mike, Braden, and two people who don't work there anymore, Zawad and Olivia. The Youth Wellness Hub is also the place I met my girlfriend. And just a quick note about Irene. She has helped me deal with so much stuff since I started going there. Since talked about the stuff I liked while at the Youth Wellness Hub, the peer support workers knew I liked trivia. So on June 19th, 2024, Trivia Night with Jeremy was born. The second trivia night was Halloween themed on Halloween night. Everyone got dressed up in their costume and everything. The third and final trivia that was supposed to happen but never did was supposed to happen December 31st. Unfortunately, my back was so sore I could barely move. It was so bad I thought I was going to have to go to the hospital. I plan on doing more trivia nights in the future. I just need to pick a date that works for everyone. I think my favorite part about trivia nights are the promo videos we make. We made promo videos related to each trivia. The first promo video could have been better in my opinion, a solid 5 out of 10 for what we did at the time. The second promo video we made was Halloween related. I used an audio software and changed my voice to make it deeper. And we even put the Halloween theme song in the background, a solid 8 out of 10. The third promo video we made was Christmas themed, and in my honest opinion, has been the best one we made so far, a solid 9 out of 10. I don't think it will ever be topped. My favorite thing that came out of the Christmas promo video was a new nickname, Two Take Derek. We called him that because it took him 2 takes to record his part of the video. Chapter 28, YouTube. What may be surprising for you guys to hear is that I have been doing YouTube for 10 plus years at this point. I started my first YouTube channel, the most handsome YouTuber ever, Jeremy Chaput, in 2015. Yes, I know that is some name for a YouTube channel. I was being bullied back then and tried to make myself feel better by naming my YouTube channel what it was. TMHYEJC lasted until October 2017 when I started my current YouTube channel, Jeremy C Vlogs, which currently sits at 84 subscribers, hoping to hit 100 someday. I'm going to be talking a little bit about my channel stats, so if you want, you can skip to chapter 29. My first YouTube video was titled Daily Vlog Number 1, which currently sits at 201 views. My most viewed video is titled 90s Kid, Jordan Rabjon cover. It currently sits at 1,192 views. My favorite thing about that video is the guy who made the song, Jordan Rabjon, commented on the video. My current YouTube channel has 13.8k views and 364.2 hours of watch time, which is just over 15 days. Chapter 29, Podcast. January 2024, I started releasing podcast episodes on my Spotify. At first, I was going to do my news podcast, JMJC Radio, once a week, but realized that was too ambitious. So now that is released every 2 weeks. And then when I first started off, I was releasing a podcast episode called The Daily Joke every single day. But after realizing that I couldn't do it, I brought that down to the weekly joke. I'm going to talk about some stats now, so feel free to skip to chapter 30. My podcast currently has 30 streams with 4 followers on Spotify. On all platforms, my podcast currently has 125 plays. According to my analytics, 96.7% of my audience is male, while 3.3% is female. Also, according to my analytics, 6.7% of my audience is between 18 to 22, 86.7% is between 23 and 27, 3.3% is between 35 to 44, and 3.3% is between 45 to 59. What I find interesting is where my listeners come from. 63.5% are from the USA, 27.2% from Canada, 4.8% from Ukraine, 3.2% from South Africa, and 1.6% from the UK. The other thing I find interesting is the type of platforms people are listening on. 69.8% are from a web browser, 24% from Spotify, 3.2% from Apple Podcasts, and 3.2% from other platforms. My favorite thing about my podcast is the episode that currently sits at number 1 in my analytics. What is the episode, you ask? My book, The Problem with Love, which currently sits at 14 plays. Chapter 30, Music Taste. I think growing up, my music taste had a lot to do with how I was shaped. As far back as I can remember, it was mostly country music that was played in the apartment, mixed with oldie goldie music. As I reached late elementary school to early high school, my music taste shifted over to more pop, hip hop, and rap. After high school, I really got into metal and rock music. Nowadays, I mostly listen to rock and metal, country, or a special Spotify playlist I have called Girlfriend. Chapter 31, Favorite Sports Teams. Growing up and to this day, my favorite hockey team has been the Toronto Maple Leafs. My mom was a Toronto fan and had Leaf stuff all around her hospital room. So thanks to my mother, I fell in love with the Leafs. And every year I say this is the year, and every year I'm disappointed. And as much as it pains me to say it because I know it's not true, this is our year. I didn't watch much basketball growing up. I think the only full season I watched of basketball was when the Toronto Raptors won the championship. I thought Toronto would go back to back with the team they had, but then Kawhi Leonard left and my dreams were crushed. Section 4, Family and Abuse. Chapter 32, Mental Health. As you guys have heard, and as you will come to find out in the final chapters of this book, I went through a lot in my life that affected my mental health. Being bullied in school really messed with my mental health. And the thing is, back then, not a lot of people talked about mental health, so I hid how I was feeling. Losing 2 family members that were close to me before the age of 12 made my mental health even worse. But still, at that time, boys were told it's not okay to cry because it made us look weak. So again, I hid my emotions. Losing my grandpa and my dog before the age of 18 made my mental health even worse. But now people were starting to talk about mental health, and guys were finally encouraged to show their emotions. I still hid my emotions because I had to be the tough person in my family. I think the thing that really broke the camel's back and made me finally start talking to a therapist every 2 weeks was becoming the sole caretaker for my grandma, along with other things you will come to find out in the second last chapter. There are some things that have messed with my mental health lately. What am I talking about? Let me give you a list. I have realized not even my own friend group needs me. I realized I'm just a backup friend to everyone. I realized I'm the fuck up child in the family. I realized I'm the one person in this family that can't do anything right to make my grandmother proud of me. I realized no matter how hard I try, my grandma will always see me as the grandchild she should have never taken in. I realize that my father will never be proud of me because he refuses to talk to me. Chapter 33, Parents. My parents growing up was just my mother. I didn't meet my father until I turned 18 or 19. And come to find out, my father had about 10 children with 5 or 6 different women. My mother was the world to me growing up. Even though she was in the hospital, she was still there for me through all my achievements. The nurses were nice enough to take her out of the hospital and bring her to my kindergarten graduation. I would go to the hospital and see my mother for every holiday. And even though she was in the hospital, she always had a gift for me on my birthday, thanks to the nurses. I loved my mother so much, and I miss her more every day. Chapter 34, Siblings. Growing up, I only really knew two of my siblings, and that was Kevin and Irvin, or as I like to call them, the twins. At about 9 or 10 years old, my grandmother pushed my brothers away, and I didn't start talking to them again until they came into my room when I was in the hospital. I met my sister Donna when I turned 18 years old, and we have had a good relationship since then. My two other brothers, Morgan and Alex, I met at Donna's place for it was either Thanksgiving or Christmas one year. Even though we don't talk as much as we should, I'm glad I met them. Chapter 35, Aunts and Uncles. Growing up, I only really knew two of my aunts and my uncle. Let's start with the aunts I never met. Aunt Marie, or as my family calls her, Baby Marie, died the same day she was born in 1955. My Aunt Lori doesn't like the rest of the family, so she doesn't talk to anyone else. My Aunt Karen you guys already know about from Chapter 6. My Uncle Michael, on the other hand, is a whole nother story. How he has survived this long while being an alcoholic and having a wife like he does, it surprises me. One quick story that I will tell you is one my grandmother told me. My uncle's wife used to put her hands down his pants and squeeze his privates as hard as she could until he did what she wanted him to do. How he didn't leave her before, I don't know. My Aunt Susie is honestly my favorite aunt. I used to stay at her place on the weekends when I was younger. To this day, I still go out with her anytime I can. And she has helped me a lot with Grandma these past couple of years. Anytime I need to go to Costco or Walmart to get groceries, she'll go with me. Chapter 36, Cousins. There are some cousins that I don't have stories about, but I still want to mention. Those cousins are Vanessa, Shay, Eric, Carter, and Tanner. My cousin Adam, what is there that I could say about him? He is one of the kindest human beings I have ever met, and after my grandpa died, he was like a father figure to me. If I can become half the man he is someday, I will be happy. Chapter 37, Abuse. This chapter is probably going to make certain people hate me, but I don't care. I'm healing out loud because I have suffered enough and I almost lost myself in the silence. By the end of this chapter, some of you are going to ask me how I'm still smiling and how I keep going every day. I will answer both those questions for you at the end of the chapter. My grandparents took me in when I was 2 because my mom was in the hospital and my dad didn't want anything to do with me. Everyone said they were so nice for taking me in, but if only they knew what went on behind closed doors. My grandparents weren't the nice people everyone thought they were. They were abusive. I have dealt with abuse from my grandparents for at least 18 years, maybe longer. Not just emotional abuse, but physical abuse. When I was a kid, my grandma used to hit me for any little thing I did wrong. She even does it now, but it has gotten to the point where she has thrown metal utensils at me. Any time my grandpa got hurt because I was defending myself from the abuse, it only got worse after defending myself. I used to have bruises from how often they would hit me. When people used to ask me how I got the bruises, I would lie and say I was a clumsy child. We had Children's Aid coming to our apartment every month for 6 months to a year, and I lied to the workers because I didn't know what would happen if I told the truth. Looking back, maybe life would have turned out better if I did say something to those workers. I used to sleep all day and stay up all night. The reason I did that was to get some peace and quiet and not have to hear Grandma yell at me. If you remember from chapter 26, I have binge eating disorder and went through a clinic for a little over a year. The thing that made it hard when going through the clinic was having to deal with my grandmother calling me 4 names every day. And what are those 4 names she called me? Seagull, pig, garbage disposal, fat ass. What kind of grandmother says that about her grandson who she knows is struggling to get better but is trying to get better? Another thing my grandma constantly says to me is that when my mother asked them to take me in, they should have said no. Starting the middle of 2024, I started going to the Youth Wellness Hub at the YMCA 3 days a week to get away from Grandma, but me going there only makes it worse. She's trying to control my life by telling me that I need to stay home 24/7 and be her caretaker, even though she does everything herself because she refuses to let me help. But I can't stay home 24/7 because I need to be able to have my own life. I need to go to the YMCA so I can recharge my batteries so I don't get even more emotionally and physically drained than I already am. I need to be able to go out so I can hang out with my girlfriend. I need to be able to go out and have a social life that isn't just the old people from my apartment building. I just need to be able to live my own life. Now, at the beginning of this chapter, I told you guys that I would tell you how I keep smiling and how I keep going every day. The answer is simple. I made a promise. I made a promise to myself that no matter how bad things got, no matter how hard life got, I would not give up. I have too many people counting on me. I have so much more to give. I have people who need me around, and most importantly, I will not give up on my girlfriend. My girlfriend is the reason I wake up with a smile on my face and the reason I go to bed with a smile on my face. They are the reason I got my laugh back. They are the reason I have the motivation to do stuff again. They are the reason my problems don't seem so bad. And honestly, they are my reason to keep going. Chapter 38, The Life Lessons. At the beginning of this book, I told you all to listen carefully because there may be some life lessons that you may be able to learn from the book. What are the life lessons you may have learned from this book? Well, let me tell you. Number 1, if you are a quiet kid, a nerdy kid, or a band kid, trying to ask one of the most popular girls at school to a dance doesn't work out 99% of the time. If you lost your mom or never knew your dad, you're not alone. If you were abused by family members growing up, you're not alone. If you are being abused by a family member and Children's Aid asks you if you're being abused, tell them the truth. It may save your life. It may take you 8 to 9 years to find another partner, but just know it will happen someday. If you become the caretaker for a family member, don't be afraid to ask for help. Your body will thank you for not emotionally and physically draining yourself. And the most important life lesson you could take from this book is number 7. Take care of your mental health because there are people out there who do want you around. So if you need to reach out to someone, do it. Reach out to a medical professional for help. Reach out to a family member or friend if you just need to talk. Or hey, reach out to me. I don't care if you have known me for years or if you have talked to me once. Reach out to me on my Instagram, Jeremy Chaput 2001, and we can talk. Well, that is my life story so far. And who knows, maybe once I hit 40 or 50, I will write a second life story book. I want to thank you all for giving my second book a chance. Now I do have a special surprise for you guys. Warning, the following is chapter 1 of my next book, Hidden Desires, A Tale of Love and Redemption, plus titles for other books I may write in the future. Listen on for a sneak peek. Chapter 1, High School Basketball Court. Johnny, Scott, Tom, and Chad are all best friends who are on their high school's basketball team. They are currently outside running a quick practice before they get on the bus to head to the first games of the season. Scott looks up to see Tracy having a smoke by herself. "Hey, Big J, Crazy T is having a smoke by herself again," he says to Johnny. "I thought I told you guys to stop calling her Crazy T. She's not crazy. She just likes to have a smoke by herself after school," says Johnny. Tom says, "I think she heard you call her Crazy T, Scott. She's walking over here to talk to you." Tracy storms onto the court and starts yelling at Scott. Just as she's about to slap him, Johnny stops her. "Tracy, calm down. Let's walk back over to your spot and talk." Tracy curses at Scott the whole time she and Johnny are walking back to her spot. "Listen, I'm sorry about the guys. They're just trying to get pumped up before our game. I promise you I will talk to them again," Johnny tells her. Tracy is getting ready to start yelling at Johnny when he pulls out 2 smokes and lights one for himself and one for Tracy. They smoke for a couple of minutes until Johnny says, "Listen, I have to go hop the bus with my team, but if you ever want to talk, just let me know." Johnny gets on the bus with his team and sits with the guys. Chad says, "So what did Crazy T have to say?" Johnny looks at him and says, "I want you 3 to listen and listen close. Stop calling her Crazy T. The truth is, I really like her. I probably won't ever tell her, but it is the truth. So for my sake, stop calling her Crazy T." The guys all apologize and promise to stop calling her Crazy T. As the bus pulls away, Johnny looks out the window and waves at Tracy. Tracy waves back and gives Johnny a wink. "Did you guys see that? Tracy winked at me. Do you think she likes me too?" Johnny asks the guys. The guys tell Johnny that she winks at every guy she sees and that he isn't special. Now, a preview of titles for books I may write in the future. And all of these, except for one, have a what if and a tagline. Fires of Fate, A Love in Jeopardy, a sequel to Hidden Desires. What if the wedding plans get turned upside down? And the tagline is, first he saved the girl, now it's time to save the wedding. A Trail of Lies, unraveling the mystery of Cameron's death. What if you were accused of killing someone, but you didn't do it? The tagline, he was accused of killing his best friend, but is he really guilty? Revenge Unchained, a sequel to A Trail of Lies. What if the man you put in jail wanted revenge? That one does not have a tagline. A Father's Fury. What if your kid's imaginary friend was real and turns out to be a murderer? The tagline, the son's imaginary friend is real and the truth will shock you. And finally, Love in Recovery. What if you were in the hospital and ended up finding true love? And the tagline for that one, he got hurt, landed in the hospital, and ended up finding true love. Well, there you guys have it. That is the end of the audiobook. I do hope you guys did enjoy listening. I want to thank you all again for everything. And as my 2 sayings always go, always shoot your shot before it's too late. And always tell your loved ones you love them, because you never know how much time you have left with them. Thank you all for listening and have a good day.